welcome to another edition of What the Fuck Happenings here in Mindom, sort of. It's mostly me. A little ragged, a little tired, old, but still me, mostly. Yeah, I think that's a videoing. Anyway, so consciousness, I think, will be the subject because it's just something I ran into in doing some research, blah, 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 and something else, and blah, 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 and the hard problem. And I don't think I've made a video on the subject in a while, and I have found, in spending some time thinking about consciousness, being here, doing this being here thing. What is it? And so I think I can cut it down to a story that's understandable and simple enough, and terminology that's simple enough. So you get this. This is the, this is what the world thinks a consciousness is, and it's all this stuff that's just, what the hell is that? What the hell is that? What the hell is... So I guess it sort of feels that way, right? It feels mushy, like weird, undefinable, like there's just not enough words to say what the hell it is that's going on, this being alive thing, and it's just mysterious, hard to contemplate, hard to turn it into some internal model that you can make out of Legos. This is sort of how it doesn't feel like Legos. It feels like this kind of crap. It feels, what's the right word? Abstract and, blah. Yeah. Blah. Yeah, so it's all this kind of crap. But that's just how it feels, right? So this is just one of these seems like arguments. Now it seems like it's all this complex thing, but it's really doing something probably a lot simpler than what we're thinking. So I could analogize it to any device, I would argue. Our brain is just a device. So if you think about it like a laser beam or something, a laser pointer. So it's a mechanical device, and like a laser pointer, you sort of get the idea that, just put enough pressure on these two little blood vessels down here, and it stops. It'll turn right off. So it has like an on-off switch. It has functions. You could give it. You could have a smart laser beam. That could do some different things, tell the time, do this, do that. But the function is this idea that it lasers. It does this photon thing, and it controls photons and smashes them through a little tunnel. And so you could say that's the function. The function is it's an input-output device, and the energy is the input, and it has an output. So you could just say that that's the device. Here's your brain. Okay, and your brain's got a job. It's supposed to sense the world. So it takes in data, information, little stimuluses. And the idea is it outputs activities. So they can be words, I can talk. That's one of our new functions, the modern function, talking. And it can punch things, and it can do, it can poo, it can... it can do a lot of pee kind of things, but anyway, it can do things, okay, arms, legs, blah blah blah, and it can do this mind thing, thinking, whatever. But thinking is more like this, okay. So thinking, thinking, okay, is just something's output, and it just doesn't, it doesn't make your arms move, doesn't make something happen. Instead, the processing, the output just gets refed back in as duck. We thought of duck. And so then duck goes in, and then duck is triggered by other words that are connected to duck because you grew up and your duck was named Jimmy. So now Jimmy, okay, and then Jimmy's a kind of truck. And so your brain does some connected thinking. And it shoots some more of this, so now truck goes in here, and then red goes in here, and then, it just goes on, creating this connected processing of thought. And that's basically how my brain is making thoughts and all of that kind of crap. So the idea, though, is that these things are just knee-jerks, technically. They're just reflexes, just on-off switches. The switch turns on for Jimmy and truck and all this other stuff because duck rhymes with truck, and it's all these connections. That's all. It's just little connections between crap, and so it's all done by these little neurons with all their little blippity little arms that are connected to things. They're just switches. So your brain has lots of switches. 100 billion of these plus 20 synapses per one, so that's whatever it is, it's 20 trillion connections, blah blah blah. So you can store lots of Jimmy and truck and red and green and lots of concepts and words and blah blah blah. So anyway, the basic function is just reflexes. So these are just switches, and the idea is that these inputs can become, the reflex can become complicated. So there has to be, like, you see a little photon at the same time you hear a little sound, or you touch, if something wiggles one of your little hairs somewhere. And so you have a combination of reflexes that come in, and your brain says that pattern is a pattern. Okay, it recognizes that pattern because that pattern happened when an event happened. And so it associates it with, I was driving in a truck one day and I had that pattern, and then I had that pattern again somewhere else, and some event triggers those events. So the input signals can be filtered, the output signals can be filtered. So you can do something like juggling, where your brain can learn, that a certain pattern, a certain place, I throw something in the air, my eye will automatically recognize where it is in the air. And it has, because I've done a lot of practicing, it knows, it triggers, and I don't have to think about it consciously, it just unconsciously does it. I know that's either a position I can catch, or I'm going to have to move my hand because that's not going to go where I need it to go. So I can learn to adjust. So these input signals get really closely tied to these output movements. So very little thinking and very hard wiring, muscle memory to these automatic responses, and that enables you to juggle. So you can do intuitive things, right? See, this is where they use the word intuition and stuff. Well, intuition is like muscle memory. It's like you've practiced it, you know it. It's a automatic reflex now. As soon as you see a swastika, you go, oh, trouble's coming, that kind of thing. So you learn a pattern. All right, and so you automatically react, and sometimes those reactions are bullshit. Sometimes you're juggling and your brain gets it wrong and you miss the thing and blah blah blah, that kind of stuff. So it's not, it can be really functional, but it's not necessarily perfect, and it can make its mistakes because it's got to react very fast. It's got to be very efficient, very straight line, very unyielding to any mistakes. Mistakes coming in can lead to mistakes going out very easily. So intuition isn't that reliable for that reason. It's always better to do this better thing where you process it more and say, okay, maybe it's not a swastika, it's actually just a smiley face and I just was looking at it sideways. Some sort of crap like that. So this is what your brain is basically doing. I mean, I hate to minimize it this crudely, but that's, this is the basic idea. There's a machine. It's a mechanical device. Every thought you have is mechanically connected. It doesn't come from God or space or any of that horse shit. It comes from your neurons, and your eyeballs are connected to those. And you actually have neurons throughout your body that are connected to your brain, and they're transmitting information constantly. Most of it's subconscious, connections to the organs, controlling their behavior, excretions of chemicals because the system is tired and you need to jolt it, you need to get it blah, 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 blah. And so you have anyway. But it's not complicated. It's a machine. And it produces an outcome. So it's input and output. And so in the process of evolution, when this is being built, this machine, there was this catch where it wanted you to be able to learn things. It wanted you to be able to practice and become better at something. And the only way it can do that, though, is it has to know what a right outcome is and a wrong outcome is. It has to know when you succeed and fail. And then it has to tell the system, when it judges, when this, somewhere in here, it's judging success and failure of your practicing. You hit the note on the key on the piano, it hears the tone and has to say, oh no, that's not a high C. I didn't hit it hard enough, I hit it too slow, it sounds flat. It's got to be able to recognize that you succeeded and failed. And now it has to have a mechanism to say, reward the success. The success line has to be in some way. There has to be some way to modify that so you can learn. So it has to reward and punish. It has to come up with a system that says approve or disapprove, success, failure. And so it wants this line to be success. So it wants your finger to hit the key the right way so it makes the right tone. And so it has to have a system that can, force that to be the right line, to make this line stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. Well, anyway, so this is what it's looking for. So it's a way of judging. And a way of judging is essentially kind of like a way of valuing. And so it's trying to synthesize an idea of value, that there's valuable outcomes. Valuable outcomes are you meet the bear and you trick the bear into stepping into quicksand, and now the bear's stuck in the quicksand and can't eat you. So that's a successful strategy. And it needs a way to say, yes, that was a good, you did some good thinking there. So it's going to reward you with that plan works, and the plan where you get all scratched to pieces and half chewed up, that plan failed. And so it's all just about rewarding and punishing, different strategies, different approaches, whether you should fight or whether you should flight. These decisions you have to make to optimize your function, to keep your body intact, to keep yourself on that thin line, okay, between defense and offense, to keep you, navigating a very good line where you're just aggressive enough to get all the booty, but not so aggressive, that you slip on a banana peel because you're not paying enough attention and fall down and die. So, so this is what it's engineering. It's engineering a success and failure of the system, of the robot, the machine. And the only way the machine can be, it doesn't tell you like some animals pop out and they all automatically have a program that says swim to the ocean. It automatically has programs that enable something to do something. And most of the organism's life, they'll just act on this pre-program. It already has in here nice, hard, straight lines of behavior. So any input in produces the same output out. And there's not much learning. There's not much adapting or any of that kind of crap. They always do the same thing. So there's some animals, like you can poke them a certain way, and they'll just, every time you poke them that way, they'll turn left. And they'll never learn to turn right. They'll just always have to obey this instinct, this pre-programmed routine, of what excites them or what motivates them. And then these mammals and these more higher organisms, obviously, you want to be able to adapt to different environments. You might be born on a hill, you might be born in a valley, you might be born in the woods, you might be born out in the fields. So you need to be able to adapt these lines so you're not, predictable and stupid. You don't want to be really good at climbing trees and there's no trees to climb, right? You don't want a bunch of straight lines that tell you, I know exactly how to climb a tree. And there's no freaking trees, right? It's not going to do any good. You got a bunch of pre-programming that's useless. So as organisms become more and more complicated, it became possible to, say, let's screw all this pre-programming. And for humans, it became so incredibly obvious that let's get rid of all of it. Let's just almost have nothing in here yet. Let's not write anything in this space so we can write all nice, clean lines and we can see where they are and, adapt, create all new programs. And so you can see that sort of with like human babies are the most disabled thing in the natural world, I think. I don't think there's anything as dysfunctional as humans. And it takes a full, at least 15 years, you could argue, or frankly, it could be 25 years for us to really start to become fluid in our functioning, where we're actually not full of doubt and insecurities and don't know what the fuck we're doing and, confusions and all this kind of stuff. So it takes us a long time to learn how to be human. It's a lot of learning about what a word means, what a concept means of being honest and honorable and having integrity and all this kind of stuff. And so these are all the new lines that are being written in our programming. And those have to be, again, by the same system, rewarded and punished. That is, you have to get patted on the back, So somewhere in here is this idea of daddy likes me, daddy hates me, some concept of the fact that we need nurturing. We need to be taught, our parents need to educate us in a certain way where we learn how to juggle and we learn how to play the piano, because they don't punish us too much, they don't reward us too much, they don't say, oh, you're such a brilliant artist, when, all you did was fart on the piece of paper. That kind of thing. You get some realistic skills in terms of being a human, and those are going to be programming that's going to be developed on this space. And it's, your sexual identity is going to be in here. Lots of all kinds of different things will be built in that process, and it's just going to be input output. And different humans will be programmed different because they're raised in a different environment. So the key thing, though, the consciousness, is the idea of this value engine, something to make it possible for your brain to create better lines through a system of reward and punishment. To say, this was a good outcome. The outcome was good because I got rewarded, I got pleasured, I got a cupcake instead of a nail in my eye. Okay, and so that's those rewards and punishments, your body feeling good, and sometimes emotional ones. Obviously we're emotional animals, and a lot of emotional programming. And we got rewarded. Everybody in town said we were really cool. All the girls liked us and were winking at us and making cute little faces at us and shit. And so we're winning. And there needs to be a system that says what winning is. It does something. And so the irony is all of this could be, the system. If we were going to make a computer program, we could figure out that, we have one program that's this learning curve, and then we have another program that's judging results and validating, and we call that the feeling program. But it really wouldn't be feelings, right? It could just be this idea of a reward, in the sense that the system says to the system, good, you did it, you did value. That was a good. And it could have just been a fake good. Could have been nothing. But the truth is, somebody intelligent didn't design this computer program, right? And so the funny accident of nature was, when nature was trying to come up with a way of saying, what is value? What's a good outcome? What's a bad outcome? And how do I incorporate that into a brain, into a reward and punishment system? It actually made a reward and punishment system that is value. That is, it actually created a sensation that was actually negative and positive. So even though it was trying to just value an outcome, your survival, your successful alpha accomplishment, you successfully win, it was trying to say you win, okay, and that's all. And it did it, though, by creating actual value, actual good and bad feelings. So in trying to value outcomes, or value experiences, put value on the experience so we could know that this was a good program because the outcome was proper. In creating a system that can do that, it actually created value. So in trying to synthesize reward and punishment, that's the only part it wanted, it ended up making value. It ended up making something that ends up being valuable in the universe. So that's all it's using. It's the piece of the device that's doing reward and punishment, and it ended up making rewards and punishments that were actually more valuable than the abstract outcome of survival that it was intending to promote. It was intending to optimize. So the value was intending to optimize or make us capable of recognizing winning, and we need to win. So it was trying to make us want to win. And it ended up doing that by making something that's more valuable than the outcome itself. That was more, the outcome, winning, didn't mean anything in the real universe until, this showed up. And now winning is sort of dependent on your welfare, because now what you're going to feel is going to be part of winning. And the feelings are now the important thing. Whether you feel good or feel bad, whether your system is being rewarded or whether your system is being punished. And again, the only purpose of that thing is to help make these lines establish good practice, good input to output ratios. So that's the irony of it. But it's just a mechanical system, though. You can understand it's just a way of making a laser. You can make a laser using a tube. You can make a laser using a diode. You can make light shoot out of the... I guess I've got way too much clutter in here now. You can make light shoot out of a laser. I mean, you can make it come out of a device lots of different ways, you know. So, well, at least 2 different ways, right? You can use a tube and mirrors, and you can bounce the light back and forth, or you can have a diode and the light can come out the side rather than the flat part. So you can do different little tricks to make light come out in a straight beam. And the trick, the problem is that that's all nature was trying to do. It was just trying to make this reward and punishment thing, so we could make, make practice mean something, you know, so we could value an outcome, and make the system improve. And you know, instead of doing it the diode way, it did it the tube way. You could just argue. So instead of doing it the silent way that would cause no pain and suffering, it did it this way by making pain and suffering, because it's not very smart. It didn't know that it was causing something bad to happen in the universe by punishing a machine. But that's all we are, is a machine. It created a mechanism of deterrence, of prevention, of, again, reward. It made the whip because the whip worked. Now, the whip didn't have to hit flesh. The whip could have just been a principle of wrong answer. It could have just been a beep, like at a game show, that said bonk, wrong answer. Instead, the bonk ended up being, you know, this frickin' arrow, you know, this fucking knife in your nuts kind of thing. It ended up being this real thing, this thing that matters, this thing that is different than this benign bonk. You know, bonk doesn't mean it, you know, bonk. You know, who cares? I got bonked, no big deal. The universe bonked, no big deal. But when the universe ouches, okay, then it's a big deal, okay? When it starts crying, it starts being hurt, okay? It's hurt. Yeah, that's a good word, right? It's hurt. So instead of bonk, hurt happens. That's the difference. So it could have made us do this. We could have just been conscious in a way that is just bonky. It doesn't matter. We just have a sub-program that just does the valuing, okay? And it works as a reward and punishment system because the 2 programs are sort of independent, the 2 sides of our brain almost. And so it works out okay because it just doesn't matter. It doesn't involve actually hurting something. But unfortunately, because nature's dumb, nature fell on, through evolution, it fell on a system that made ouch, and ouch means hurt. And so it hurts things to train them, to teach them. So something that means something is now in the universe. A sensation is in the universe, and it has a decidedly negative nature, and it's just fundamentally negative. And so the funny thing is, in contemplating value in the universe, the joke is that nothing has any value but the machine that is judging value. So the irony is, right, everything in the universe is just crap. It doesn't matter. And it only matters indirectly in how it affects machines, okay, that are able to judge value. Even though there wasn't any. There wasn't any value to judge until the value engine, that, you know, that could matter, until the value engine showed up. And now the real value isn't the outcomes anymore. The real, you know, the outcomes in the physical world. The real value is in the engine, okay, that is programming the outcomes. The machine that makes it possible for the machine to learn is now the machine that is the one that matters. And everything else is only gains its value because how did it affect the hurt engine? How much hurt did it make? And that's all that matters now. That's the only thing that has real value. And this incidental value of you need to survive and you need to outmaneuver the other robots. See, it was just a robot war, you know. paramecium against paramecium, speck of dust against speck of dust, little machines against little machines. It didn't matter who won, who lost. It was just a way of optimizing the machines. But once this was invented, then the game completely changed, and now we're stuck in this this configuration. So again, you can just understand that consciousness isn't something special. It's just a way of making the device. It could have been a laser diode, or it could have been a tube, and it was just a circumstance of fate that nature did intelligence, or did learning. Okay, this is about learning. It did learning, okay, by creating a real reward and punishment instead of a synthetic reward and punishment. And that's it. That's what conscious, that's all the distinction is between conscious. So we didn't need to be conscious. We didn't need to have a real hurt engine. It's just that that's the way the biology did it. It did it by creating real hurt rather than synthetic no. A synthetic no or a synthetic bonk wouldn't have meant anything, but instead it made the real thing. So in trying to synthesize an idea of value, it made real value, and that's sort of ironic. It's bizarre and strange and weird and all that kind of stuff. So you can understand that it's just a machine. Okay, I mean, I've said this before, but yes, it's doing this simple process of creating a fake little world for us to live in that's made of what we can see and what we can hear. We get pieces of information. We don't know reality. We don't see reality, frankly. We see something that's very useful, in terms of navigating it, sticking my hands through it and being able to understand what's in certain places. But the truth is that's not even how the light works, because we have a little trick. We have a little tiny hole that the light goes through. And if it wasn't for that little tiny hole, we couldn't see any of this stuff, because the light there's images of everything everywhere, almost. I mean, they're going everywhere. And there's, no matter where you'd move, you'd see 17 images of the same thing, or 1,700. And, lots of complications. But because of this little hole, only certain rays of light can get into our eye, and so we can only see a little specific kind of world. Most of the photons can't get into the hole. So that's why we can see. We wouldn't be able to, if we were a flat piece of film. If I put a flat piece of film and face it at the world, I won't get an image on it. I'll get the makings of a hologram on it, but I won't get an image. There'll be information on it, but it won't be anything like what we see. And all of our senses are sort of doing that. They're all little tricks that give us information, pieces of the environment. We only hear certain frequencies, because there's ones that have valuable information and ones that are just noise. So we don't hear all the noise. We don't hear the universe humming, because it would be very distracting. That kind of thing. So we're just a machine, evolved over billions of years for a purpose, in the sense of just to survive, to win, to outcompete the other machines. And a great feature to have to outdo the other machines is to have a learning program that allows you to practice and make perfect, to learn routines, learn habits. And the only way that learning process, the way you need to optimize it, is to have some way to reward, to identify success, and make the system know that routine worked. That line was nice and straight. That line was a good line. You threw the thing and you caught the thing. So it had to have a system to say which was a successful practice and what was an unsuccessful practice. And that's what your brain is doing all the time by making you feel something. It's just reinforcing things that it wants to make permanent, or make routine, or to make reflexive, or to make intuitional. It's just trying to learn how to make the machine as efficient and quick as possible through this mechanism of manipulating your sensations and saying when things are working, you feel good, and when things aren't working, you feel bad. Now, obviously, there's lots of, parts of it are just stupid, like, you know, your tooth is broken, you can't do anything about it, and it hurts. Well, that's just stupid. But your brain doesn't know that's a waste of pain. So there's not much you can do about it. So there's lots of cases where the punishment's being imposed for no good reason. There won't be anything gained from it. It's just wasted torment. It is quite possible, let's say, that if insects feel, you could imagine, they learn. So it seems, I say, it would be kind of silly to say they don't have the same mechanism working for them. We wouldn't have more than one way of lazing. So the fact is that our ancestors were doing this long before we showed up. They were doing this feeling thing, this reward and punishment thing. The whip was invented a long time ago in evolution. But you can imagine that something like metamorphosis, where the caterpillar turns into the butterfly, might be extraordinarily painful for the caterpillar. And nature wouldn't really care. That, you know, it just doesn't know that it's hurting something. It doesn't know that optimizing the machine to function can torture. It just doesn't even know the word torture exists. And so it can impose it quite incidentally, not as any function, but just because it doesn't consider it a waste. It doesn't know how bad it is. It doesn't know how negative it is to be actually doing that, training something when the thing isn't practicing. Right, when you're not trying to juggle and your brain is reacting to things flying in the air, trying to catch them, but you're not doing it, you're not practicing. It's not doing you any good to feel sometimes. Sometimes what you feel is totally useless. It just gets in the way because your brain is using this mechanism. It's thinking you're practicing when you're not practicing. You're not trying to learn. You're not trying to do this or try. And so there's lots of inefficiencies in how we feel and in how we function. And but it is a machine. So we're sitting here in a device that's created a projector. It projects a reality. It allows us to create new pictures on the screen. So the projector has a film it throws on us with our senses. Our senses create part of the pixels on the screen, and then our brain associates those pixels with other images and other things, and so it throws some more information on the screen. And we're just sitting here, you know, the conscious part, because we're the place where these feelings mix with the programming device. And so we're just sitting in that bowl, and we have to be there because this is the only hurt happens. Hurt can only happen in this bowl, this conscious state. That's how hurt works, is you have to have whatever consciousness. So we're just sitting here while the process mixes. It mixes the feelings. It mixes the symbolic representations. It, you know, like I said, every time I see the color red, there's a little bit of an emotion. Every color has an emotion tied to it, little bits of feeling. You know, we don't see the color as much as we feel the color. We feel the texture of things, like this little black and white image. It has texture. It gives us an emotion, deepness, meaningfulness, blah, blah, blah. We get these ambiguous little jolts of feeling mixing with the images. And so that's what we're seeing. That's the projector. You know, the screen has surround sound and the chair vibrates and all that crap. And we're just sitting here consciously experiencing that. And the rest of it is all subconsciously happening. It's all a bunch of code we don't get to see. And it just happens. And we watch it happen. We sit here and watch ourselves being ourselves. We watch ourselves do our routines. We watch ourselves juggle the way we've learned how to juggle. And it's just a machine. And you don't have to put all this connected to the universe thing, connected to each other. No, that's happening. There's no spiritual information. There's no magical information. It's all just an internal device, a little machine that senses the world, comes up with an output, and is doing it through a hurt mechanism, a mechanism that allows it to be rewarded and punished. And the reward is basically take away the punishment. Take away the negatives and you have a positive feeling. So I would argue the default state of the consciousness is euphoria, and the practice, the work of it, is just figuring out what points to whip. And that's all there are. There's just the whip. And it diminishes the euphoria. Little bits of the whip just keep taking it away from you. And you can go into some conscious state with drugs or sex or some other thing where you will gain some immunity to the whip. The whip will be silenced and you will flow back into your default state of euphoria. So that's why there's nothing to be accomplished here, because all you are is diminishing the euphoria. Your consciousness is blighted by the practice mechanism, by the reward and punishment mechanism. The punishment mechanism, really. That's all you can do, is be punished by living, taken away from your euphoria, having it diminished, and diminished substantially. So there's no real hard problem. We're conscious because nature isn't a computer programmer, and it did kind of a crappy, sloppy job. It did something a programmer wouldn't have been stupid enough to do. If we were making a robot, we wouldn't invent, let's hurt it, let's cause it pain to force it to behave properly. No, we would just have a little mechanism that says, good job, bad job. It would just go bonk or bing. Bing for the right, bing, bing, right answer, bonk, wrong answer. It would have some simple code that said good, bad result. It wouldn't have something, where the bonk was really a hurt, a pain, a negative sensation. So that's it. That's the reason why we're conscious, is because nature isn't very good at making things. It's unintelligent design over billions of years of slow and gradual change, and this it just fell on as a mechanism, and it worked to create good behavior. Hurting you when you hit a tree taught you not to hit trees. It's just a fact. Now, it could have taught you some other way, but now hurting you worked, and that's why we're stuck with it. But so I'm saying there's no hard problem here. The whole thing you're perceiving is an illusion, in the sense it's just constructed out of elements that aren't the same thing as what it's producing. Just like the laser beam isn't made out of photons. It manipulates photons. Your brain is just manipulating behavior elements, and it's synthesized through that process, this idea of hurt. It's just an idea in your head. But the fact is that idea was turned into a reality. It was turned into something realish. Okay? It just is. So I can take, just like the laser beam has a specific configuration of atoms, I can take that configuration, and no matter where I move it in space, it's still a laser beam. If I have, certain number of plastic atoms and this atom and that atom, I put them together, always lasers. Well, if you put together the same sort of thing, this collection of atoms in a certain arrangement, it produces pathways of atomic change through atoms expanding and contracting and electrons flying around and whatnot, that just ends up creating this insanely bad illusion. This insanely bad arrangement of matter, where something called pain is felt, and it's felt in some extreme way, and no matter where I put that collection together, I'll end up with that. So I can take away most of my brain, right? I could, if we were really good at this science, you could theoretically understand that I could just keep taking neurons away until I got to just the pain. And so all I had was the engine, and all it was creating was suffering. And it didn't do any thinking, it didn't do anything. It just did the suffering bit. And that goes on in your brain. There's one little part of your brain where the electricity is doing this hurt program, this hurt arrangement, this painful sensation thing. And if you could extract that, the rest of the brain could work. Might not work as effectively because you're not going to be able to learn anymore. But it's just one part of the brain's function. It's just one stream of the flow of this electricity. And that little pattern, if your brain does it in this conscious state, with the laser on, this is what you get. That's what it's going to create. But again, I can't. It's an emergent thing. It comes out of the configuration. It comes out of the fact that this is a complex system that is creating this theater, this fake place where I'm actually experiencing my life. This generated thing inside my brain. It's just a pattern of the movement of electricity. And that's the part that's hard to comprehend. It's hard to understand how this mechanical device can create this laser beam. But I guess it would just be the same thing. I mean, I could show a human being 2,000 years ago a laser pointer, and they'd be like, that's magic. And so we're looking at our brains and we're saying that's magic because we just can't really understand how it's possible to have these mechanisms that could create this illusion that's one hell of an illusion, that can't really be called a nothing because it's way too something. And we're experiencing it, so we know it's something. We just don't know how to describe this something because the something is really just a pattern of the arrangement of molecular substance, matter. And a particular arrangement creates this, whoa, what the hell was that? This hurt, this feeling, this I'm alive thing. I guess I concede there's some parts that are still hard to comprehend, but it really needs to be understood. It's just part of the machine. It's just this bug thing. It's just, that's all it is. We know it's this little neural network of electricity that's just really saying reflex here, input reflex, output reflex, and that's all there really is. It's just knee jerk in, knee jerk out. And it's just making those knee jerks more and more complicated by connecting a whole bunch of them together. And by connecting them in a certain way, you're going to create sensation. You can. You don't have to make the device work, but that's the way, that's what nature did. And I would argue it made a mistake in doing so. Very dangerous thing to play with. Actual harm. So anyway. So I won't pick it to pieces. There's so much that needs to be argued through because people have so many misconceptions. And again, it's, I can't argue that it doesn't have the appearance of abstractness, but there really isn't any ambiguity if we could really see it. If we could really see it, we could see the parts of the brain that are essential to the creation of the sensations. And we could find those little on-off switch. We could just, cut that wire and it shuts it off. It really is that mechanical in terms of the way it's functioning in our brain. And its purpose, though, is going to be understood. We can understand why evolution does it. And I guess that's part of the understanding why it's not a hard problem. We don't feel because it's a great way to program. We don't have the whip because it's a great way to program. No, it just happens to be a way that works. And nature used any way that worked. The one that worked, it fell on it and used it. It could have fallen on a different way to make us intelligent. But this is the way it happened on Earth. Now, I'm not suggesting it happens anywhere else because there's so many rare and unlikely events that are just almost every day in our history. We climbed an improbable ladder, and we just kept climbing very improbable ladders. But anyway, to get here. So this isn't a question I don't think many organisms are having to ask themselves in the universe. This isn't something that has to be contemplated and figured out. But the wrong way to think about it is what's indicated in all this mushy imagery. There's something quite explicit to the function. We're just soda machines. You can dissect our function, quarter in, weigh the money, see if it's not fake, see if it's got a hole in it, blah blah blah, test the money. Okay, it's good money, do the output. All right, we're doing just that simple a thing, and the only difference between us and that soda machine, in a sense, is the fact that we have a couple of other instruments that are measuring our performance and saying, how well did we perform our job? Did we, and that's it. and we're learning to do it better. We can improve the performance. We can improve how quickly we scan the money and all that stuff by learning shortcuts that always work and that kind of stuff. And to learn, we had to be rewarded and punished for outcomes. And it's that simple. So we have a few extra little features, but it's just a machine, just a robot, just a mechanism, and everything that's happening in our brain is just as mechanical as the parts happening in our hand or in any other part. It's all just mechanism, and it's not in any way connected to any universal strings or any other coarse shit. It's not magical, it's not spiritual, it's not holy, it's not just not woo. It's just a physical functioning machine, and the feature of the machine is that it has achieved a level of complexity where it can create very elaborate illusions. And again, the illusion is more like a hologram. The illusion isn't, it's only illusions because we can't see it. But if we could see the blueprint of the machine, we could understand the beam it's creating. We would understand that the beam is a real thing, not a fake thing. The pain and the sensation is real. The negative quality is sensibly understood. That it's intrinsic to the function. It couldn't function as a whip, as a punishment, if it didn't hurt us. It's just a fact. If it didn't mean something, it couldn't have any effect. Alright, so maybe I'll just keep it that short, because it's not likely I'm going to encourage people who want to wooify life that I've given you all the answers you need. But the simple truth of why are we conscious, the simple answer is because nature isn't smart enough to do it a more sophisticated way. As funny as that sounds. A way in which you don't have to cause harm. You don't have to create the opportunity for pain and suffering. It just didn't do it this better way. It did it a way a smart thing would say, don't do that. That would be really stupid. If all you want to do is make a machine that performs. Again, what's happening on the inside is now more important than almost our function. And the only way our function has any value is how are we going to affect other feeling machines with our behavior. Now the whole game is backwards, in the sense that we're not here just to win. We're here to create less whipping, less pain and suffering. Changes the whole meaning of our function. Where there was the silly win for a game nobody cared to watch. It was just this idea of a performance engine, an engine that said it will only go into the future if it replicates well, makes stronger, better machines, and that was just the fact. And there was no definition of better other than you're surviving and they don't. You survive better than they do. And that was the simple competition. And obviously now the value can be understood that that game doesn't have any value, but this consciousness does, because it's generating the real thing. In trying to artificially create meaning in the idea of surviving, the brain has created something really valuable. A welfare of a sentient organism. Alright, that's probably enough. And such. So, huge, important subject in terms of this is just, this is where all people go all kinds of sideways. Because they can't see the machine. They can't see the mechanism. They can't understand it. And so they just keep looking at it and saying magic, magic, magic. Like a caveman or something. And it's not magic. Alright. That's enough. Alright, so till the next time and such, we'll leave it at that. It's a lot to absorb. Subject of consciousness. Anyway, till next time. Such. A lot of videos this week, so no need to drag this one out. So yeah, see ya and such.